Donna Corriel, welcome to the Lean Out podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Happy to have you. Awesome to see you again. So, tell us about who you are and tell us a little bit about your work life balance these days.
Sure. So I am an internist. I'm a midlife internist. I pivoted mid-career to become an entrepreneur. I figured out different talents that I had in the middle of my life after I had become a physician, after I had worked for many years as a physician, as an internist. And those talents and those skills slowly formed into actionable items. And I formed a community called SomiDocs. And then I created a platform with my own two hands through which my peers and professionals like us could get the word out on what they were doing, no matter what they were doing on our work, out inside of medicine, outside of medicine, and I've always envisioned spaces where we could socialize and we could interact and we could do so freely. And I'm proud of what has been built over at doctorsonsocialmedia.com and all the communities of SoMeDocs.
SoMeDocs really has a lot to offer. There are so many different ways you can get involved, which is beautiful. And I'm wondering how this vision came to you. You talked about recognizing some talents and gifts. So, what were those talents and gifts? Tell us a little bit more specifics.
So I took a break from medicine when I had my third child, and it really gave me time to breathe and to really take in life, I'll say, things I just never had before. Physicians don't have much time to breathe or to take in life other than what is almost like dictated to us. So when I took out time, I gave a chance to doing things that maybe other people do and maybe take even for granted, but things like cooking and things like designing and things like writing and things like creating and even social media, which back then when I was starting to dabble was sort of frowned upon, especially in medicine. It was like not a place we wanted to dabble. But I recognized that social media was a place that was increasingly popular outside of medicine and that was actually yielding influence on our peers and on our society in general. So I started to really hone in on this and try to convince doctors that we needed to be on there. And I did that in some of the existing Facebook groups, and it only went so far. And then I was convinced to just form my own space because either nobody was listening or thought it important enough, or I was being censored or deleted, etc. And so I formed my own group called SoMeDocs, and I used the skills of learning how to website build and how to design and how to be an entrepreneur to really grow a venture that has arms that I feel my peers need and help peers to grow their visibility, etc.
I would love to get into the double-edged sword that is social media, but before I do that, I'd like to know more how you decided to transition completely out of clinical work. What was it that kind of brought about that shift for you?
It was a combination of things. I can't say it was one thing. I can say that in a general field like internal medicine, the system is broken and you really feel it as a general physician. I even see it all the time now in the few years that I have not been practicing and have been working on my previous side ventures full time. I see increasingly see burnout. I see physician constantly looking for either new side ventures or ways out. I see especially family medicine docs, pediatricians, internists saying, I can't take this anymore. I can't do this. And that was kind of how I felt then as well. That said, I did have something set up, and that was SoMeDocs. I had SoMeDocs that was already, the vision was already in my head. I already knew what I was building out. Part of it was built out, although it isn't what it is today. So I was able to step aside knowing what I was building in the same way that any startup founder takes a chance and says, I'm going to do this and I'm going to dedicate my full time to it, even if it's coming at the expense of something else. In my case, it was literally something I had trained for my whole life. So I guess you could say I was taking a really big risk.
Yeah. Well, how did that feel in terms of financial uncertainty, identity uncertainty, or anything of that nature?
Well, excuse my French, but it felt shitty. It felt shitty stepping away from something that I had trained for so long and that I deserved to have a place at the table at. And I did. I had a place at the table. I was an internist. I was practicing. I was loved by my patients. I had a great job. My employers loved me. It wasn't that I was leaving contentiously, but it was hard. It was hard on my family. It was hard on those that don't understand. And at the time, less physicians were leaving than are now. And so people were just like, why would a doctor leave her field? And believe it or not, I actually got the most pushback from my peers who kind of, there's a lot of ridicule, a lot of sarcasm, a lot of condescension, especially from those that thought they knew what I was doing and just thought that I was leaving my job to just be on social media or be an influencer. And at that time, it hurt very deeply because my vision was there. And I was like, that's not actually what I'm doing. I'm not leaving to be an influencer. I am leaving to build a media company that has so much more, that does so much more than that. But at this point in time, years later, um, I always say I've just, my, my skin is thickened. And so I guess care less when people say that because it's obvious to me that they don't understand, but not, I don't care little enough not to try to explain it to them because that's the crux of SoMe Docs is kind of to convince my peers exactly what influence is going on and why things are happening the way they are, et cetera.
Okay. Yeah. So, how do you feel now about your exodus out of clinical medicine? I assume you have a different acceptance level at this point.
I think that I do only because more and more of my peers are taking time to look through the site, taking time to actually understand it, taking time to come to webinars that I hold explaining how they can use it. And they're also coming to our online conferences. They're coming to free conferences online. Like they're coming and they're networking for free. They're paying very little for these conferences that yield them CME that bring the same speakers as they have in person. They're literally experiencing these things and they're going, wait, hold on. Like, she's actually bringing value to us. And so I'm starting to get turnaround from peers who are like, okay, so she's actually doing something really useful and then some. Because again, it doesn't end where conferences are. We do so much. We have a magazine, we have series section, we have membership, we have Facebook groups. We have so many ways. And to get people together, to get peers together, to get the public together, but really to open discussion that's necessary amongst professionals in healthcare.
Yeah. So there is really like I said, a plethora of options for how you can utilize the information, how you can be involved, and how you can even showcase yourself to peers and to even lay public on your website. So you have that aspect. And then you have these groups, like you mentioned. So you have a few different Facebook groups that are related to SoMe Docs. Talk about your experience with managing these Facebook groups and the interactions that you've had that are kind of both positive and negative regarding that type of management.
I've had so many experience over the past over a decade with the world of healthcare social media, the good things that happen on it, and the really, really bad things that happen on it. And the really, really bad things that happen on it are just outright scary, for lack of a better term. It's scary enough where I've sort of pushed it aside and stayed silent, but also scary enough where I'm no longer can be, and I speak up on certain things that are just so egregious that to me, we should all be paying attention. Um, so yes, there are Facebook communities. I also want to say that there's also ways to make passive income for my peers and such by taking part in conferences, etc. And there's really, I built every arm in a way that benefits my target audience, which is the physician at the end of the day, but also other healthcare professionals and members of the public. Really, they're always in mind when I build things, right? From keeping costs down to literally giving back and actually paying the doctors, right? I've held conferences where I've insisted on paying the speakers, but I've actually lost money myself. So to that detriment. Um,
Mhm.
but that's not things that are advertised out there, right? Those aren't things that I usually openly talk about because I just think it's the right thing to do so that I can sort of build my own venture in a way that really sits well for me and that I can be proud of and that can't be picked apart by anyone in ways that don't make sense or by people that don't understand me. So I have really tried to build groups in a way that I would have liked the groups to be when I first went on social media before I needed to form a group. And those are groups that have rules, right? The problem lies in groups that don't have rules because there always needs to be some form of guidance where you can understand, like, what is the purpose of this group and how does it run? And then by applying that rule to everybody in the group. And some of my peers are, will kind of shoo that concept away and say, oh gosh, social media. And they really don't understand the impact of these interactive spaces where it would be the equivalent of just all physicians gathering around in a medical school nearby and exchanging their ideas. It's the same thing. We're just not doing it geographically. We're doing it from across the country, across the world, and we're all gathering on one space and we're having discussions and we're talking and we're influencing and we're sharing. And there's beauty in that. But again, that's a double-edged sword because with that beauty, the question always becomes, well, who's in control?
Well, one thing that I've noticed about your work is that you are very equitable in giving people opportunities. I feel like that's the very core principle for you. And also another core principle is free exchange of ideas. And recently on the platform, there have been some articles where an anonymous physician called out a particular Facebook group for being very biased in the sense of what was allowed to be discussed and what wasn't allowed to be discussed. And that if you talk about certain political things on a certain side, that you were going to be kicked out of the group and that sort of thing. And that ended up giving backlash to you personally, even though the article wasn't written by you. So, can you speak about this experience?
Um, yes, I can. It was really, I want to say it was surprising, but nothing surprises me anymore. So it was, I'll use French again. It was really shitty. Um, I, like you said, really pride myself on being equitable, allowing voices to speak up, even when I don't agree with them, right? Even when they make me feel unsafe. And I'm going to use that word because that word gets thrown around a lot. I don't feel safe. And one person cannot feel safe because of another person's truth. But does that mean that that person's truth is not true because another person feels unsafe or that they should not share it? I just don't understand how, with intelligent people, we can stifle intelligent conversation. And even when it's not intelligent, we can stifle peers with what they have to say just because they either are taking, a political side or they are saying something that's insulting to you, or they're saying something that could be deemed as religiously offensive or racially offensive or gender offensive. Like, that's how we move forward, is that we share the truths that are sometimes uncomfortable and sometimes are hurtful, and we explain to the person why it's hurtful. Maybe the person doesn't understand. Anyway, I could go on, but the point is that these spaces that have been created for, some of them purport support and some of them purport a place where physician women can get together, and others purport this is where our side ventures will come together and get shared. um, it kills me that It's a farce. Like, it is a farce, and I cannot mince my words any more than what I have minced by saying that. It's a farce because it is not open to everyone.
Mhm.
People are discriminated against, and people are discriminated against sometimes based on their political affiliation and sometimes based on their religion. And what bothers me even more than that is that some people have started to call light to that, including myself and including SOMI docs. And the response from some peers is like, yeah, I really don't care. And I'm just so confused. Like, when it happened to just me, it was one thing. But when you're shutting down like thousands of people, doesn't that make you think why? And even if those thousands are wrong, like, why do you feel like it's okay? We've got 80,000, 100,000 physicians in a space that's being curated to the point where there's heavy, heavy influence. Okay. Where someone asks either outright or anonymously where their $10,000 should be invested. And the only answer, well, a few answers get, thrown around, maybe by the answers of the person that admin's friends with, but also by the place that admin is invested or maybe gives them kickbacks. And that's okay. And again, I want to say upfront, I'm an entrepreneur. You should absolutely, referrals, affiliates, totally legit. What's not legit is fooling people around you by making them feel like it's a democratic space where everybody can contribute, but really you're erasing and deleting and censoring comments that you don't like, don't benefit you monetarily, don't benefit your political affiliation, don't contribute to your beliefs. And that's really bothered me. And I kept thinking in my head, like, how is my space going to be different? Because admittedly, it's going to be hard for me to see comments in my Facebook groups say things that are, I feel, harmful or hateful. Right? I could take anything of myself. Let's say because I'm a woman and I see that a man in my group, because SoMe Docs is open to both men and women. Again, it's open to everybody. We're all equal. We're all humans, but open to men. What if a man says something that could be deemed as derogatory by some women? Okay. This is the perfect place to educate him. And if he doesn't understand, then that's okay. Maybe others that are watching will understand. But everyone should have the ability to comment. Maybe someone will come to his defense. And then the person who wanted to educate him will say, oh, wow, that's actually a good point. I didn't think about it from his viewpoint, et cetera. Like, the problem is when one person at the top or when 10 people at the top or when whoever is at the top is deciding who gets to speak and who doesn't, you don't have intelligent conversations and you don't have stupid conversations either, which is okay too, because sometimes stupid conversations are necessary to point out that they're stupid. I mean, I hate to say
Absolutely.
it like that. Yeah. And so
You
what I
learn from the things that are not good as well.
exactly.
Yeah.
And we're creating echo chambers because listen, and I know it and you know it, that there's, and I'm just talking about political affiliations, right? There's the liberal groups and there's the conservative groups, and that's it. There's no middle ground. Like, you can't meet in the middle. Maybe you can meet in the middle, but like everyone sort of pretends and brushes over things. And in our field, there are people that have things that they want to share that are a little bit less than, nice. And maybe they should share them. And yeah, maybe there should be consequences. I don't know. That's the other thing that bothers me too, and that I meant to write about it. And I understand the need for it. I understand the need for, so for those listening that don't know this, Facebook groups nowadays, like, they're very like territorial, and to me it's almost dictatorial when they say no screenshots. So it's like, well, why? Like, you should be proud of the things that you say. We all also make mistakes. That's okay. You can make a mistake and that'll be screenshot, and then yeah, there'll be a consequence and you'll say you're sorry. I think that we're going to see more of that as social media becomes even more a part of our society, is that we're going to see people apologizing for the things that they posted, just like when they say things they didn't mean and they say, you know what, I thought about it. I'm sorry. I really didn't mean it. I didn't mean it that way.
I think
But
that's a really good point because, we have to learn consequences. And this is a new territory. This is definitely I gave a talk on social media at a large conference, and we're talking about, like, even in reference to parenting, everybody has to give each other grace because we're navigating an area of communication that didn't exist, more than 10 years ago.
I mean, it makes me take like a deep breath in because it like is such a hard topic to talk about. There's so much good in social media, and yet I don't know if you'd agree with me, but I'm sure that many of the listeners would agree that I almost wish it wasn't here, because it's done so much bad. Like there's so much fighting nowadays, and I believe it's because of social media. It's almost like we are too connected. I call it hyper connected, where faults are magnified and we do not possess as humankind like the ability to forgive each other, which is so interesting because we have an article coming out in the SoMe magazine about the comparison between doctors on TV, right? Like in the pit versus
Mm.
doctors in real life, where doctors in the pit are lauded and they're like amazing and they can never do wrong. But doctors in real life, no, they're not lauded, and a lot of times they're ridiculed, and how dare you say this? And so it's almost like we cannot forgive our human nature. We cannot be real with each other. And that's really sad for me. And especially in a field where it's been such a respectful field where we respect one another and we openly speak, etc. It's almost like this online megaphone has been turned on suddenly and has made us into cruel people.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely do agree with that. I think it's a huge double-edged sword. I mean, we have so many connections that we didn't used to be able to have, and also free exchange of information. I see posts in some of the Facebook groups I'm in for physicians where people are sharing information related to a clinical problem, and, someone on the other side of the country has seen that problem, or they, like, have seen it a lot, and they really know how to deal with it, and the other person in the other area is like, "I've never seen this before," that kind of thing, and that is super helpful. But then at the same time, yeah, I mean, I think that vitriol and anonymity too, in some ways, you act differently than you would in an in-person interaction or even a phone interaction than, on social media. But, with this in mind, what is your vision for this platform that you've made, for the future of SoMe Docs?
So things are always evolving, and gratefully, always evolving in a good way. And part of that is because I am really, really invested in making this work and in making this work for the endpoint users, and that's the public and that's the doctors. So thankfully, I've really taken care, and time to take away the arms that don't work. I will
Mm.
constantly think of new arms and new ways and new things to add to this platform, and take away the things that aren't working. And that's something that, for example, in medicine, we can't do. We can't just throw a medication at a patient and see if it works. And like, okay, great. If it works, then let's keep it. And if it doesn't work, let's not. You need trials, you need time, you need proof, you need clinical proof. And that's the beauty of entrepreneurship is that I don't need that. I mean, I need the proof, but the proof comes much quicker. And so you really can, as an entrepreneur, be much more malleable to how you change things around. And that's why, for me, the future of SoMe I hope, is going to be great because it's headed by somebody, at least so far, who is really open-minded, um, strives to be equitable in a way that gives everybody the microphone and invites everybody to come in and to say how they feel, even when it's controversial and even when it can offend people, including myself. Um, but says it out there so that we can think over that viewpoint and then negate it to disprove it or support it because it makes sense to us. There's no interactive online space that does that to my knowledge without censorship in some way or other. And so I would love to have that happen. Now, we have all kinds of Facebook groups at SoMe just to explain to your audience, but there's three general ones. There's one called SoMe which is where we invite physicians only, and it's really about anything. It's about anything medical or anything that is shared on social media, etc. The rule is that in the post, there's no links to outside work unless it's from like the So Me Docs magazine, etc. Because this way we can control that there's no excessive marketing and it doesn't turn a lot of peers off. But where you're more than welcome to post links, promote yourself, promote what you believe is a good resource, promote your events, etc. in all the comment sections, and promote discussion. Nobody gets erased. Um, Nobody gets erased because everybody's thoughts matter, whether you're nice, whether you're not nice, whether you're mad one day, whether you're not. Hopefully where there's no consequence, but where you need to, own up to what you say. And that's, I think, how adults should act in our field. So there's SOME docs, there's doctor side ventures, which is for doctors only again, but it's more for those side ventures that we're doing. And I, created that in response again to a Facebook group where I was stifled and where SOME docs regularly gets erased when people ask for resources and others get erased as well. And then the third general group is SOME docs Healthcare, which is open to the public. It's open to doctors and it's open to patients because we host conferences that are open to the public, like obesity medicine and menopause and lifestyle medicine that patients want to be a part of as well. And part of our conference is hosting an interactive space online, and we use a Facebook group to do that in. So
One thing I've noticed about the website itself is that it's very visually beautiful. There's a lot of aesthetics that goes into it, which I suspect is something that is a labor of love for you. I know you take photos and love designing that.
big time, big
Yeah,
time.
and if
Thank you for
someone
noticing that.
yeah, absolutely. And if someone were to go to the website and they haven't been there before, where would you suggest that they start? At like a physician, if a
Yeah.
physician's gonna go there.
So looking around, they can scroll through the arms and see for themselves what we showcase. But the most important thing is getting into the doctor directory. So we have directories that I created again with my own two hands. The original was the doctor directory, and it's a public directory and it's like no other. It showcases us in all our glory. It kind of resembles almost like a modeling agency, but it's a modeling agency for our brains because we all are educated in the medical world. And I would highly recommend joining. It's $100 a year. We're happy to work with anybody that either wants group discounts or can't afford it and just wants to come on. But for that, you get a profile built into the directory. And from there, you can actually make that profile a portfolio by adding layers to it. You could get a writer's page built in our books and blog section. You can get a podcast page built in our podcast section. There's a courses section and a coaches section, and but there's many things doctors are doing on the side, and I always wanted to showcase that. So again, I would recommend any doctor um, to get in, become a member. You also, for that, you get networking every month that's online. We time it with our online conference so that you get a new cohort of participants in the networking hour that we do virtually. So it's really cool. We just had a private practice conference and like most of the speakers came and the panelists and some members were there. And so people really got to exchange who they are and what they're doing and let's build collabs. And we even built a video out of it thanking someone in our life and we edited that. So we do that every month. I do want to say that speaking of design, um, that is actually a hobby of mine. It almost has been my side venture while I was building SoMe Docs. And I'm proud to say I haven't actually even yet announced it, but I'm actually starting a second venture, a second business called Give Them Swag, um, which is going to work with SoMe Docs in partnership, but it's basically like really fun swag, including, shirts and hats, all the way to gallery quality prints that you can hang in your either home or office based on a lot of, so far at least, the images that I create because again, I love design. That's my side passion. Design, photographs, AI, digital manipulation and just making things look great.
Yeah, I have to say that I did an article for Some Doc some time ago, and you made an image, and I loved it so much. It was like you took this image I had sent, maybe like a photo of me that was climbing, and then you had me climbing, and it was like all kind of colorized, and you had me climbing on a brain. And it was awesome. I was like,
I love
how did
that.
she do this?
Yeah,
The
how
talent.
many thought went into that? Exactly. Like, listen, every time somebody submits an article, like I'm the editor of the magazine and I go through and I really pour my heart into it. From the image to making sure that it sounds good to doing little like boxes with tweetable quotes in it. And I actually do it too. We publish it, we tweet it out, we share it on LinkedIn, we share it on Instagram, we share it on Facebook, we ask the author to share it in our Facebook groups for discussion, and we circulate it in our newsletter. So I work really, really hard to promote physicians, I guess, which is why, just to come full circle, why, it was so hurtful, both initially when I was ridiculed for leaving and told I was a traitor and people said, why was she doing social? That's ridiculous. To now, to, being kicked out of a group where bad things were said about me when really like I'm working hard and doing my best. And like I really have good intentions. And if you don't see that, that's fine. Um, I no longer feel like I don't need to prove that to anyone. I'm still going to come on to podcast and explain what I do. I don't think people understand. I think innovation sometimes needs to be dissected and explained. Um, but I no longer feel like I'm doing something that's wrong, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does, and I really the amount of care that you put into it, really shows. It definitely shows to me. I recognize that. Do you have any last advice for someone who maybe wants to break into an unusual, unserved area, that may be adjacent to medicine or may not be, and really is feeling stuck and like they don't know how to take the first steps?
Yes, they should um, take time to experiment, allow yourself those mistakes to get better. You're going to make mistakes. Um, Align with others that are making mistakes and those that have succeeded. Come into SOMI docs, maybe join at a higher level, even with those of us that are networking on a more regular basis. Um, we've got many in our community that are tackling things that are really difficult, but have succeeded because there's a community. Um, Understand that there's going to be what I'm going to call haters, especially when you succeed and especially when you say something important. Um, and really just believe in yourself. Like for the most part, people that go into medicine, again, for the most part, we're good people. And anything and when you seek out a side venture, there's usually a good reason that you're doing that. Don't and let anybody put you down. And again, we all have our dark days, we all have our dark moments. When you do have those, reach out to the community that you're a part of. It could be SOMI docs, it could be a different community, it could be like an individual person or a coach, and just, get that camaraderie that you momentarily need to like give you that strength.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Donna. Great advice, and I appreciate you being on the show today and sharing all of your gifts and all the things you've been working on.
Thank you so, so much for having me on.